You all know that really old guy with a metal arm, brainwashed by Hydra, best friends with Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, who just so happened to be named Bucky? Yeah, bet you didn't think we'd talk about him in a Utopia video, did you? Well, you're right, we're not. We are instead talking about another famous Bucky, Richard Buckminster Fuller. Hey everyone, I'm Brandon, the futuristic Utopian. One of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, if not one of the greatest doers, Buckminster Fuller epitomized efficiency and the promise of the future. He also had a nickname so catchy that the Winter Soldier stole it. Had Bucky, that is Buckminster Fuller from here on out, not Bucky Barnes, had his way in the early 1970s, the world may have been one utopia richer, and Bucky could have become a household name. Although I probably wouldn't name my kid Bucky. Fuller was oft-quoted as referring to himself as a comprehensive anticipatory design scientist. Whatever that means. Basically, it's a cross between an artist, an economist, an engineer, a psychologist, an inventor, a mechanic, and a strategist. At his core, he was a practical futurist. He was then equally skilled at getting the world towards its final destination, while simultaneously being strong-willed and hard-headed. Because which great person among us isn't? Fuller would rarely compromise on his ideas or his designs. To humanity, that is. In fact, he would many times be forced to compromise his ideas and designs just because of the laws of physics. Buckminster Fuller is perhaps the most notably renowned for the popularization of the geodesic dome in the United States, a hemispherical, thin-shelled structure based on a geodesic polyhedron. It's essentially a dome created from interlocking triangles. Probably the most well-known example is Spaceship Earth in Walt Disney World's Epcot. Shout out. Born in Massachusetts, Fuller went on to attend Harvard University, before ultimately being expelled. He then took a job at a mill in Canada where he learned to modify and improve manufacturing equipment. He joined the Navy and ultimately received a nomination to attend the United States Military Academy. An extremely complex man, Fuller would eventually say that he came to the realization that he had a responsibility to use his experience and his intellect in the service of others. Upon this realization, Fuller then spent the better part of the next 2 years far away from society so that he could contemplate how best to do that. Over the course of his life, Bucky amassed 25 different patents, among which included a mass-producible home, which could be airlifted to different locations, a streamlined three-wheeled car, a map which depicted Earth on a flat surface without the visible distortions of the relative sizes and shapes of the different continents, and of course the aforementioned geodesic dome. Many of Fuller's inventions were used by the US military. His portable housing became a staple in World War II, and his geodesic dome eventually became part of the design for the Ford Motor Company's headquarters. Speaking of Ford, did you know that he actually tried to build a Utopia too? You can click the card right here and learn all about it. But even with countless inventions that made it out into the world, there were numerous more that only ever existed on a piece of paper or inside Buckminster Fuller's head, which were never to be built and never to be fully realized. Our next Utopia is one of these. It's the first one that we've discussed on the channel, which was never realized and was never built. It only exists on paper and in the mind of Buckminster Fuller. The Utopia of, wait for it, Old Man River's City. Yeah, I agree. It's not a very catchy name. But it would have been super cool to see built. Trust me, I study these things. You see, Fuller was approached by the city of East St. Louis, which, for those of you unfamiliar, as I was when I first started learning about this, that's not actually St. Louis. East St. Louis is in Illinois. Seriously, it's a different thing from regular St. Louis. It's just right next to it. I mean, someone must have just been like, hey, what town are you from? And then the other person must have been like, well, we actually don't have a name. We're just east of St. Louis. Ah, so East St. Louis. I mean, come on, get your own name. This is a joke, please don't hate me, Midwesterners. I live here now. So the community leaders in East St. Louis asked Buckminster Fuller to create something, well, anything really, to assist the ailing city's poverty and economic problems. And his answer was a utopia, obviously. Yeah, you guys should have known that by now. Okay, but to be fair, in all the research that I've done, I've never officially found any record of Buckminster Fuller ever referring to his creation of Old Man River City as a utopia. But as you'll see, it was an attempt nonetheless, so let's get started. The idea was to create a mountain in the shape of a moon crater. The crater would have an opening at its peak, that is half a mile in diameter and then covered by a transparent geodesic dome. That's right, this guy really liked his geodesic dome. This covering would protect the opening of the city from rain or snow. The dome would be akin to a transparent umbrella. It would let in sunlight for biological necessity, and the runoff of water from the dome would be collected in reservoirs and ultimately be used for fire sprinklers or even purified and turned into drinking water. And now, it's time to get technical. Measuring 1 mile in diameter, the dome would not disrupt the views looking out from inside the city. The bottom of the terrace would be 500 feet above the ground, surrounding the crater, and at its peak, the dome is 1,000 feet high. Rising up from the ground, the cratered city would have 50 terraces along its sloping exterior. Each terrace would be vertically 10 feet away from the next on either side. The crater would also have a slope on the interior. The outside of each slope, both interior and exterior, would house private homes. The terraces themselves would be filled with trees, bushes, shrubbery, and other plants to act as a divider between each terrace, which would provide privacy for each individual home as well as the experience of living in an outdoor garden without fear of the elements, thanks to the geodesic dome on top. The homes on the exterior of the crater, sloping outwardly, would be family housing units. Remember, this guy did describe himself as a comprehensive, anticipatory design scientist, so he's got to keep things pretty technical. These housing units would be similar to the size of single-family homes. The dwellings on the interior of the crater would be akin to apartment-style housing, with each unit having a floor area of 2,500 feet. Yeah, it's bigger than my apartment. Fuller estimated that Old Man River City would be able to effectively and safely house 25,000 families between its interior and exterior dwellings. The city of East St. Louis, at the time, only had about 14,000 families, which totaled a population of approximately 70,000 individuals. For contrast, Old Man River City would be able to house 125,000 people. Fuller anticipated more and more growth for the city at the time of its design. All right. I hear what you're saying. So, Brandon, we have the housing part down and we have the structure, but so far, it just seems like it's a giant apartment complex. Well, that's because we're not done with the episode yet, guys and gals. I mean, do you see that time bar down there? We still got a ways to go. You see, inside the crater at ground level, a playground about 4 times the width of a football field was going to be built. And then the terrace slopes of the interior were also going to double as stadium seating, like at a sports venue. Just this one with a lot more room. Instead of being crammed inside a stadium in those really uncomfortable seats and those armrests that dig into your sides and have no real back support for taller people, each resident would have a 260 square foot seating space, like a little terrace in their backyard. Then, inside the city itself, the lower level terraces would have enough room to house tennis courts, schools, playgrounds, supermarkets, outdoor theaters, and an assortment of other activities. Below the terrace levels, there would have been enough room to house all the activities that, at least in Buckminster Fuller's view, didn't require daylight. Which I'm not totally sure if I agree with, but nevertheless, here we find shops, places of business, restaurants, mass transit systems, highways, parking lots, shipping routes, factories, and even elevators to transport citizens to and from their residences. Picture an ocean liner or a cruise ship with all the amenities and living arrangements, yet without the space limitations that ships have imposed on them by the necessity for them to traverse oceans. Apart from the spatial efficiency inherent in the basic outlay of the city, Fuller also cared about the efficiency of its construction and being able to build his city with the fewest resources possible. For instance, the 1 mile in diameter terraced dome roof was estimated in the 1970s to be about 2% of the total roof and exterior skin surface area of all buildings standing on equal ground in any conventional city. Simply put, instead of having a whole bunch of individual roofs, you save a ton of resources by just having one big one. Not only that, but the crater-like design with the terrace roof as an open lid was projected to reduce heat loss to atmosphere by 98%. Think of the energy savings. Yet, the opening between the city and its terrace guarantees fresh air year-round. And efficiency wasn't a luxury solely reserved for the terrace. The entire structure, the crater itself, would have been constructed with efficiency gains which hadn't been seen before. Fuller had planned for the entire area to be developed with the same earth-moving and construction techniques as seen in highway building and suspension bridge building of his time. I mean, this guy was like the 20th century Elon Musk. Well, at least the pre-2015 Elon Musk. He planned for construction to begin with railway tracks and other bypass track systems, and it would be on these initial transportation infrastructures that the cranes and other heavy machinery would travel. He also anticipated that, due to the repetitive nature of his design, the shape was the same whether you were at the bottom of the crater or the top, construction crews would be able to more efficiently build each next level. The actual structure was to be built with reinforced concrete, and steel rods would be implemented to support the terraced dome roof. Fuller wanted Old Man River City to have the same properties as a suspension bridge, but ultimately be vastly safer due to the fact that the inhabitants and their property would only constitute a small fraction of the stress that similarly designed suspension bridges would experience from their constant use. Now, this all sounds well and good, but in the end it comes down to who in fact would pay for this. Well, okay, yeah, I may have already told you that it was never built, and so by the looks of it, you're probably saying that it sounds way too expensive to have ever been built. And while you're not wrong, you're only half right. You see, Bucky could have had a real chance at getting investors to his utopian city. However, he was adamant that funding not come from any private foundations or government subsidies. You see, Fuller believed that government building subsidies actually carried a high interest rate, and rather than helping the individuals who would actually occupy whatever was being built, the subsidies would instead line the pockets of bankers and real estate operators and the developers. As a result, Fuller fully wanted this city to be built with the best interest in mind of the city of East St. Louis and the East St. Louisians. East St. Louisians? East St. Louisians. East St. Louisians. East St. Louisians. People from East St. Louis. People from East St. Louis. Due to this, he wanted the least amount of outside influence on the city as possible. Fuller thought that by self-financing and building scale models and prototypes of the crater and its living conditions to simulate daily life, the citizens of East St. Louis would recognize on their own how much they needed this to be built. He's actually quoted as saying in his book Critical Path that, "What I would design must be so right that the entire community would fall in love with it, or it would be dropped." He took that further and went on to say, "If they did fall in love with it, I would carry on with all the development expense, and that they must not allow the project to become a political football." What a swell guy. Lucky for Fuller, the people of East St. Louis actually did fall in love with the designs and its benefits at a very early stage in its process. And guess what happened soon after? Politicians from Illinois State began offering grants and subsidies to help get the project built. However, Fuller ultimately rebuked all of these offers because of the whole who really owns the city thing, the citizens that live in it, or big business and government. Truly noble of him to actually stick to his principles. The one downfall of this plan, though, was that, unfortunately, it seems like Fuller forgot the entire reason that he was asked to create this utopian city in the first place. Because of the high level of poverty and slowing economy. As a result, it just wasn't feasible for the people of East St. Louis to foot the bill for this massive undertaking, leaving Fuller to ultimately table the project due to this financing problem. Even without the citizens' ability to pay for the project, Fuller held firm in declining any funding that came from outside sources, or which could have come from people who had a different agenda from those who would ultimately benefit from living in the city. Well, there you have it, guys. That's Old Man River City for you. Never been built, but maybe one day it will be. And folks, my question for you today is, did Fuller make a mistake by not accepting outside investment? I mean, I totally get where he's coming from, don't get me wrong, but it seems like the people of East St. Louis really needed something like this, and it could have actually helped. Let me know what you all think down in the comments below. Don't forget to follow me on social media. I'll have the links over here. If you enjoyed this video, then feel free to go check out another one. We already plugged Ford earlier. Tell others about it. Leave a comment. Leave a like. Can't wait to see you all next time. And until then, just remember that the future is out there. You click the thumbs up, right? Good.